So normally, if you are going to authorize users to access different parts of the app, um, you don't want all users to have the same level of access. And that is where roles come into play. And the tables in the database are created for identity support roles, but there is no code in the app for user roles. So if we want to assign roles, we have to create this part of the app. And there's several different steps that we need to follow. First thing we're going to do is create a role controller, and then we're going to do an index view and a create view. And this will allow us, and we're not going to put the routes in our navigation bar at all. So this will be something that, that we would know, but nobody else would know how to get into. So this is going to allow us to see what roles there are, and it's going to also allow us to add new roles. And so basically we've got a role controller. And so you can see that we've got the index, which is basically our list. And then we've got create. Okay. And then for the post, the create is a little form where we're basically just going to fill in the name of the role and we submit it. And then it goes back to the index. As far as the views go, we're going to have a view for the index. Okay. And so you can see that we are going to bring in our identity roles, the model. And then we basically are just going to throw them into a table. There's going to be an ID and a name. Okay, and so this is kind of a predefined thing because this table is already set up. So we are basically creating an index to pull from an existing table. And then our create is going to create a form that we're going to submit. And then up here in the role controller, it is then going to update. So we've got create here. It's going to be updating that table. Okay. So that is kind of how all of that works. After creating the controller and the views, then we have to modify a file called register.cshtml.cs. So this is the C# kind of behind the page. And we have to add role objects and properties. And then we also have to change register.cshtml to add a role dropdown list to the view. So when we register somebody, we can assign a role to them. Okay, and so the register.cshtml.cs class is several levels down, and you can see I've kind of shown you here where it is. We have to modify register and the code behind. So for register, what I tried to do here is put in comments for the code that we add for roles. And there was some other code in here that we didn't need, so that was removed. But you can see that here we are adding role manager, identity role. Here we are also adding the role manager, as well as here. Here we've got email password, confirm password. And you should remember that from when we actually created our registration account. And then down here, this name is the role. Okay, so we've got that there. And here, Basically, it's retrieving the roles and it's adding them into a list for display. Okay, and you'll see that the roles are going to be in a drop-down list. Okay, and then here's another one. So with this one, we are actually going to create that user account. And if it succeeded, the creation succeeded, then we are adding roles to the table. Okay, and this is the command that is adding them to the table. And so you can kind of follow along here. This is what values was before, and then this is what we ended up changing it to. Okay, so before we had code, return URL, and now we've kind of taken that out because we have roles. The confirm email is still there. Okay, here that has been commented out, and then this is what we have now for roles. And then at the very bottom, again, this is that it's retrieving that list of roles. Then register.cshtml. This is the registration page that we see. And it has been modified to include the name. Okay, so this little section down here, it's creating a selection list, a drop-down list for the role ID and the name, but it's just going to display the name. Okay, and so that had to change in the registration form, and that is the location of that change. Program CS also has to change. We have to add services for add identity and authorization options as well. So if you look here, we are adding these services to add identity. This is identity user and identity role. And then we've got add authorization. And we are going to be adding a read and a write policy. So a read policy, who can actually access it for reading. And then a write policy is who can access it for updating. And you'll see that administrators and managers can update, but regular users cannot. So once we have the roles defined, we should add them to the database. And what we have to do is run the app, and then on our address bar, just do role/create. And this will give us that create screen where we can add our different roles. And the roles we're adding are administrator, manager, and user. And then once we have those roles added, we can go in to our role controller and add in the read and the write policy. So read policy basically is any of those users can retrieve the index, but the only people that actually can do a create on at least on a role would be a manager or administrator. Okay, and so that's the read and write policy that we are adding to our role manager. And so it is kind of important that before we put this in, we have at least one administrator or manager, or we are not going to be able to add any roles. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind with those. And that also affects deploying the app because when you deploy to a production machine, you're not going to have any seed data or anything like that. So what ends up happening is we kind of have to comment this out. We deploy the app, we add our roles, and then we can remove the comments, and then just kind of submit the changes for redeployment, which once you get it deployed, not hard to do. Okay.